Welcome to Secrets from the Saddle podcast. I'm Sylvie D'Aoust, your host, fellow cyclist, bike club founder, cycling coach, bike race junkie, just truly super passionate about cycling. My journey with cycling started 20 years ago when I opened a spin studio, started a women's race team, and founded a women's only cycling club called Cycle Fit Chicks. I'm super thrilled to reveal all aspects that make the world of cycling operate. I'm so excited to be able to bring you interesting people from around the world, pro cyclists, recreational cyclists, coaches, event organizers, bike shop owners, everything and everyone you need to know or ever wondered about when it comes to cycling. I know you'll enjoy this episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Secrets from the Saddle, All Things Cycling podcast with your host Sylvie D'Aoust, and we have back the amazing Camille Lawson, who is a registered nurse, sex therapist, and she has been on the podcast in episode 278, talking about hormones and the female athlete. And today we're going to talk about men and their hormones, which we would call menopause. So I am super excited to have her on again to talk about this. This is something that nobody is talking about, and I'm glad that we're here talking about it today. So let's welcome her on. Let's get started.
Okay.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Secrets from the Saddle, All Things Cycling podcast with your host, Sylvie D'Aoust. We have the gorgeous Camille Lawson, who's in from Toronto, who has been on the podcast before, episode 278, if you want to check it out, hormones and the female athlete. So today we are going to have Camille talk about the men's version of menopause. So that's menopause. And I just said Camille is a registered nurse. She's also a sex therapist, and she knows a ton about hormones, like a ton. So I'm so excited to have her on the podcast talking about menopause and the male athlete. Welcome, Camille, to the podcast.
Thank you, Sylvie. I'm thrilled to be here. And this is a topic that, as we mentioned in the last episode, doesn't get talked about very much.
Ever.
You know, many people say, what about men go, what about me? Or do I go through something? And the technical name is actually andropause, but we can also call it menopause. And the truth is, yes, men have hormones. You know, we do tend to focus so much on female hormones because they do rule us in a way that men's hormones don't kind of rule them. But men absolutely are affected by hormonal changes, and particularly in midlife, which is where the name andropause came from.
Yeah, so I know that there is like a ton. I mean, I can't even say like a ton of stuff for women, and women, I think maybe because we talk about it more because we're just so vocal about it, and where men are more closed in about this and maybe don't even realize. So let's just talk about like what those hormones are for men and maybe some signs that things are out of balance.
Sure. Well, I think the one that stands out for most men as being their number one most important hormone is testosterone. And that tends to be what we think about in terms of male hormones, and for good reason. Women have plenty of testosterone as well, but significantly lower amount, whereas testosterone in men is one of their main hormones and is responsible for the larger muscles, you know, not just height, that's human growth hormone, but so testosterone plays a really important role. And not to freak any men out here, but testosterone actually starts to decrease in men at around age 35. But the good news, men here, whereas in women, our decline of our hormones around 40 to 50 goes like this, like literally can go, you know, almost seemingly overnight. With men, when the testosterone starts to decline at age 35, believe me, it is not a steep decline. It's just a nice, gentle curve. So for a lot of men, they're not even going to notice a significant difference at all. Where men do often start to notice the decline in testosterone is around age 50. And to be blunt, it is very common and very normal for many men to experience erection difficulties starting at around age 50. And we know that so many men are extremely sensitive to this. And I get it. I mean, of course they are. That's part of their male prowess. It's their sexuality. It's we know through sexuality is primarily how men show their love. Intimacy is the glue, as we say. Maybe they're not as good verbally, but it's through sexuality that they can show their partner that they really deeply care. So that change in erectile function is often a big shock to men and a blow. So I really want to emphasize and reassure men that it's by far the majority of you. Things that can happen are things like it might take longer to get an erection. The erection may come and go. You may not get an erection sometimes, where in the past it was just there and really easy, where you felt the desire and then bang, you've got an erect penis. That doesn't happen as often, maybe. Also, sometimes taking a lot longer to have an orgasm than you're used to, or maybe not even having an orgasm sometimes, which for a lot of men is certainly not what they were used to when they were younger. So a lot of these changes can be considered normal. Now, does that mean that men like it and want to accept it? No, hell, heck no. And if you on an extreme, not an extreme, but on a pharmaceutical note, that's where Viagra and Cialis, in my opinion, are game changers, because for a lot of men, they can't really find ways to get their testosterone up. Perhaps taking a bioidentical hormone of testosterone. There's many men who are going down that route. I'll speak about that in a moment. But on a simple level, Viagra and Cialis were created to help bridge that gap from the disconnect of I feel desire in my brain and the blood flow and everything to my penis, because of the testosterone, is not sort of synchronizing the way it was. And Viagra just fills in that gap, and it works. It's really effective. We don't have a female equivalent as yet, of a drug that will help us. So much as I don't advocate, Sylvie, a lot of medications, I have to say that it's been a game changer for many, many men and their partners, for sure. So on the other note, what are some ways, though, that men in particular can get their testosterone kind of up, maybe, and to a higher functioning level as they get older? Well, I know you're a huge proponent of exercise. And guess what? Exercise is a fantastic way to pump up our testosterone for men and for women. Doing weights, so resistance training, which I've watched your videos, Sylvie. Maybe you can speak a little bit about that, about with men, because lifting weights, strength training, resistance training is a really good way to get our testosterone up. So how would men start with that if they haven't already?
I don't know. Like, I think about my husband. Not that he has any problems, but I think the whole when you come to weight training, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself, and I'm going to talk about my husband. But as women, as we get older in our 50s, we know that strength training has to move to the top of the list.
Yeah.
And I think and I experienced this not too long, like 6 months ago. I stopped strength training and everything changed. Like, I can't even tell you how fast it changed, like muscle definition. And I can only imagine that with men, that if they have not been in the gym, their definition is much lower, muscle development, like, there isn't much. And when they get into the gym, then that's when all the endorphins start happening. And it's happening to me. And I think it would probably happen like 100 times more for a man. Like, my husband stopped strength training and it showed. Now he started strength training and it showed up in his personality and his attitude, and just sort of like his overall awareness and kind of self-confidence in himself. And I do feel a lot of that has to do with your body image. I don't know. Correct me if
I
I'm wrong, but I think that's where it all comes from too.
It does. That's certainly a piece
Mm-hmm.
of it, Sylvie. And there's two other components that I think are really relevant here that you've touched on for men. One is human growth hormone. So human growth hormone is a really important hormone for men and for women, maybe even more so for men. Again, it starts to decline, in our 30s and 40s. And there's a trend right now of particularly in the States, actually, because it's not used nearly as commonly in Canada, of people to go get human growth hormone injections. Why? Because it's got the kind of aura around it as being the fountain of youth. And in many respects, human growth hormone is, because it's responsible for kind of our joie de vivre, our stamina, our vigor, if you want, that sort of thing. Well, human growth hormone, if you take it as an injection or as a hormone that you're ingesting, has some pretty nasty side effects that most people don't want. Unless it's dosed exactly right, people end up with a plastic Barbie doll look about them. And guess what? It doesn't go away. It's permanent.
No
And now that
way.
I don't want to horrify you, but now that I've told you, you will see people with it. I'm thinking of one very prominent doctor that I know here in Toronto that has way overdone his human growth hormone, and he's got this look, and it's not attractive. So how can we jack up human growth hormone more naturally is what
Naturally.
we
Oh my
want. Well,
God.
guess what? Strength training.
Yeah.
Absolutely, strength training. The other thing is getting at least a couple hours of sleep under your belt between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. has been shown to significantly jack up our human growth hormone. So using myself as an example, have always been sort of an 11:30, quarter to 12 kind of person. In the last year or so, I've made myself go to bed often, not always, by about 10:30. Without question, I can feel it. I wake up. Not only is it just better for lots of reasons, I do believe it's the human growth hormone. You're getting that deeper restorative sleep, and it's during that sleep and your REM sleep that you're jacking up the human growth hormone. So there really are some ways. Doing some natural cleansing of the body,
Oh,
using,
yes.
our Isogenics Cleanse for Life drink, that jacks up human growth hormone. So some element of fasting, a healthy intermittent fasting or fasting. So that's a big one. And the other one I wanted to touch on, Sylvie, is stress. So both for men and women, and I know you and I have spent lots of time talking about the effects of elevated cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And again, we focus on women. We think of women, carry a lot of load in the family and work and everything else, that we carry a lot of stress. And that is very true. But the truth is, so do men.
Do men.
And because they don't have often the relational outlets that we as women have cultivated and part of our nature, I'm stereotyping, but it is pretty commonly accepted that is a universal truth. Men don't have the same outlets. Sometimes sports are a really good outlet. Again, the resistance training, getting in the weights. I'm not a huge proponent of long distance anything because of the inflammation. I know we disagree a bit, but getting on your bike, maybe it's a little run. For me, I play a lot of tennis, so whatever your jam is, whatever is your stress release, maybe it's yoga. My son, by the way, is a hardcore cyclist like you, like big time. And he took up yoga 2 years ago because he said, I have to
Yeah.
get my hip flexors stretched. I have to do this. He feels fantastic since he took up yoga. And this is
Yeah.
a 29-year-old, 6'3", young
And
man. So men,
it's
you can do it.
it's amazing when the guys figure that out, because like I'm just talk about what your son's feeling, because this, as a cyclist and even myself, you go out for long rides, your back, your hip flexors, your hamstrings, like everything, even your shoulders, like everything starts feeling sore and tight. And it doesn't take much for yoga, like 30 minutes. I only do 30 minutes a week and I feel the difference.
Yeah.
But I make sure I do it. And then I have my husband who complains about being tight and not being I'm like, did you do your stretching? And it's just like, it's
I
not
know.
a thing, right? It's like crazy, and when he was doing it with me, I could see that he was struggling. And I think that's part of it, right? Like we
Absolutely.
all struggle through these things and we just need to keep at it, because if you're super tight, it's not going to be comfortable to begin with until it's you've been doing it long enough and it becomes comfortable. And that's when you're bettering your everything so that you don't get injured.
Absolutely. And you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, Sylvie, about body image. And as we get
Yeah.
older and into our 50s, 60s, I'm 62 now, is flexibility is
Mm.
key to
Yes.
aging well, being able to move our bodies. So for men, again, because I think it's had more of a reputation, it's not as manly, but
Mm.
it's simply if it's yoga, if it's stretching every single day, 15 minutes. I would never play tennis without doing at least just 10 or 15 minutes of good stretching, and it keeps me really limber for sure. So flexibility is key. And that kind of circles me around to another important point I wanted to bring up. Because men tend not to be as relational as we say. So when they hit their 50s and maybe they're having some testosterone issues, possibly the erectile issues that we spoke about, I think for men, part of the andropause is questioning their relevance. And it's not unlike women with what we sometimes call the empty nest syndrome. You
Mm.
know, when you're for women, often it's who I define myself as a mom. You know, you most of us have, if we've got children, we've spent a lot of time and energy raising those children. And then when they're launched, we kind of have that void. But we sometimes overlook, Sylvie, that men also are that way. Women and men are in the workforce, often around 50. Our work is not as valued as a society. We know that. I
Yeah.
think men sometimes can get let go from positions, and it's a big struggle into your 50s to
Mm.
find a comparable position for many people. And so I think that's part of the hormonal changes and the stress on men is asking those questions. Who am I? And in my opinion, these are really important questions to ask. I don't look at it as a midlife crisis. I look at it for all of us in our 50s as a midlife evaluation. You know,
Mm.
here I am.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I want to go in the next 20, 30 years? Because guess what? That's probably all you got left. How do I want to be? You just
That's
being
still a
honest.
very long time too, Camille, right?
It's a
Like
very
you
long
think about
time.
like 20 years left. Like how do I want my body to feel in 10 years?
And my
And
mind and my
yeah, and
brain.
I want to retire and be able to do things. How many people retire and go straight into having a heart attack or a stroke?
Oh,
Like
oh my
seriously,
goodness.
right? That is like the saddest thing that I have that I can see in somebody's life is that they work so hard for everybody else and then forget about themselves, and then when they have their time to retire, that's what happens. You know what I mean? And or they get sick of some sort.
Yes, and
Right.
I don't want to dwell on it, but I personally know three men in
Mm-hmm.
their mid 50s who died of massive heart attacks.
Mm-hmm.
That's really young, people. And, you know, to circle back to hormones and fitness and all of that, we do know that primarily heart disease, which is the number one killer still, is plaque buildup. What causes plaque
Mm-hmm.
buildup? Inflammation. The basis of everything is inflammation. So we want to do everything to reduce inflammation. You know, so we want to be looking at, you know, all foods have an acid um, base, like pH. Even
Mm-hmm.
though coffee's acidic, for example, alcohol is, lots of different foods we eat. That's fine, but we want to make sure we're countering that, for example, with a lot of alkalizing foods like greens. There's
Right.
no
Mm-hmm.
mistake that every single, you know, heart healthy diet in the world talks about lots and lots of leafy greens. Why? Reduces inflammation, it's alkalizing to the body. So you just always want to be, I think, Sylvie, aware.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, as you know, all or nothing at all. I know you
Me
like
neither.
And you're not either. And I love that about you, because you are a walking billboard for fabulous health and vitality and beauty. And at the same time, you're balanced. You enjoy a cocktail sometimes and eating different foods, as do I. But it really is about being intentional, I think, with it.
Oh,
And and thinking about what am I doing, and being true to your exercise. I, like you, kind of have let my weight training go a little bit, just different routines, kind of getting out of.
yeah.
I really notice a difference, and so I've just gotten back into it in the last 2 weeks, and I can
Yeah.
assure you I feel much better for it.
And it happens so fast. Like, I say, in your 30s and 40s, when you stop weight training, it's okay, you can stop and, nothing will change. But when you're in your 50s,
Yes.
what age you just turn around and things have shifted and you're like, and we all know that it takes twice as much time to get it back to where it was. And
It's
so it's
true.
not even worth stopping. And, because I think I like for women and men, and maybe, I hate to generalize, but, do women tend to put themselves first a little bit more over men? Like when it comes to personal health? What do you think?
Well, yes and no. I think that's a bit of a loaded question.
Question? Yeah.
Yeah, because I think women are more cognizant and aware of the need for, let's call it self-care, to carve out
Mm-hmm.
some me time, some exercise time, that sort of thing. On the other hand, you know, men don't have the outlets necessarily that we have, as we said, so they can keep things a lot more bottled up. And do they intentionally go out and, okay, I need to get out to the bar with my friends and watch the game? And they usually don't. We know that, the social life is usually, primarily the female partner. That's, I'm stereotyping, but that seems to be what I
Yeah.
observe around me and with my counseling clients. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I do think women carry a lot of the burden of stress for the family and the family's health as part of their um
I think the men have the financial,
more
more of the
so. I
financial,
mean, we're
yeah.
stereotyping. A lot of women,
Yeah.
of course, we know contribute
Mm-hmm.
equally, if not more, and that for both parties again brings on more stresses. And so
Yeah.
that need for that self-care, that need for outlets, both emotional and physical, becomes so important. um Yeah, it's actually a big topic, and I'm glad that we were able to touch on the emotional and the hormonal, like the physical and the mental, because I do think for you men, that's a piece that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. And just to finish, part of the two things I wanted to say to you. I love your cycling community for exactly what it is. I know it's primarily women, but for men too, a cycling community. My son lives in the mountains and he has a cycling community. That is his fun, it's his social, and you've created that, Sylvie, with the what you've done in the saddle, and I'm really in awe of that. And the second thing I want to leave you with, that I always think of you with the weight training. I remember you teaching a couple years ago, all you need is 20 minutes. Just go do it. And I've heard your voice, I'm not kidding you, in my head when I'm like, I don't have enough time to run down to the gym. I have a gym in my building. I'm like, Sylvie says just 20 minutes. And sometimes that's all I'm there for, 20 minutes. And do
Yeah.
I ever feel good when I'm done? And it
Mm-hmm.
only took 20 minutes. So I thank you for that very much.
Thanks for saying that, Camille, because I have to fall back on that too. Because, like, and then I'm like, oh, I don't have 20, but I have 9. And that means 3 exercises 3 times around, for 50 seconds, 1 minute each, and then I'm done. And then I
Better
can
than
feel
nothing.
it is better than nothing. And if I can
Yeah.
target one area of my body, then so be it. And sometimes, I find that just lately I've gotten into and it's a mindset too. Like it's like I just need to do it,
Yeah.
schedule it in and do it. and I don't know, I always say if it's not in the schedule, it doesn't really happen. It doesn't exist. But I get up early to do my workouts. I know a lot of people do meditating and journaling, but if they don't happen in the morning, they just don't happen.
Very true.
Like I
Very
have to
true.
do a leg one and I'm like, "Ugh, it's probably not gonna happen because I didn't do it this morning."
Well, that's probably a great place to leave off for today, Sylvie,
Mhm.
is schedule it in or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I
Just love
want
it.
to, yeah. So I mean, that's for men and women, right? Like kudos to my husband. He actually went and he physically joined the gym, paid for. I know not a lot of people are back to doing things like that, but gyms are there, and he goes and he leaves the house every day at lunch. What he does there, he does stuff.
I love it. Good.
And but the thing is that he leaves and he goes and I can see the difference and I know that he can feel
Yeah.
it in his body too. And so if you're sitting in a space where I would like to maybe get a guy friend in and do like the three of us talking
Let's
about
do that.
menopause, and you said
Andropause. Andropause.
andropause and menopause,
Let's do it.
and have a little like chat. I have to think about who I'd bring in here, but um, I think it's the same for anything, like you said. Like we just talk a lot of things that affect it, like the stress, the cortisol, the sleep, the nutrition. Like we all know this. Like how many
Yeah.
times do you have to
We
hear
need to be
things?
reminded though, don't
I
we?
guess so. And then we need to implement as we go. So I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much, Camille, for
My
your
pleasure.
time. It's
Of course.
amazing, and we will work on getting a three of us. We're gonna bring a guy in here.
We're going to do a
Um,
three-way.
a three-way conversation
Love it.
on men's hormones and just diving deeper into that because as we can dive deep into women's hormones, let's just see if we need
Let's
to
do
dive
it.
deep into men's hormones.
I
So
will look
thank
forward
you,
to that.
everybody.
Thank you,
Camille has an
Sylvie.
amazing YouTube channel
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
on hormones, and she explains so much information in small quick videos. They're amazing.
Thanks,
Look
Sylvie.
her up on YouTube.
It's embracinghormones.tv and lots
There
of
you go.
videos. Yeah.
Yeah, she does
Okay.
amazing stuff. Thanks a lot,
Goodbye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Sylvie. Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome. All right, and there we had it. I know Camille had to jump on pretty quickly. She had a tight schedule, and we spent too much time catching up before getting on this podcast episode. So, one of the things I'd love to hear from you guys, commenting on our YouTube channel after listening to this, or putting a comment in on your favorite podcast platform, is that guys, ladies who have guy friends, partners, men who listen, would you like to know more about the male hormone? Yes or no? And because I am serious about bringing in like a couple men to talk about, I feel that we have just scratched the surface. I would like to know more. Like my husband, how can I help him more? Because I know that us women, you can read tons about how you can help us, but how can we help our partners and our male friends go through menopause or andropause, just like we have so many outlets for women to help ourselves, like to help each other. Like there's so many Facebook pages, right? Are there Facebook pages for men? I only know of one. A friend of mine, I wish I could remember his name. I'm so bad with names. Who has a male channel, but I'm not sure if it's about male problems over business. So maybe I'll reach out to him and get him on the podcast. Anyways, so I'd love to know your thoughts about that. Honestly, please comment. Because it's important for the podcast. I want to be able to offer more interesting, insightful conversations with people about all things cycling. And I need your input. So with that, thank you so much. Make sure that you follow the YouTube channel for Secrets from the Saddle podcast. And you can also follow me on YouTube as well, where I put cycling videos. And I'm also covering my journey through Unbound XL as I train and lead up to it. So have an amazing day, and don't forget to get on your bike. Thank you so much for spending this time with me on the Secrets from the Saddle podcast, learning more about sighting people, places, and things that make cycling such an exciting sport. I am so glad you stopped by today. Please leave me a review if you feel so moved to do so. I would love to hear your feedback. And if you could take 1 second to share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it, I would be forever grateful. Also, if you could please leave me a review if you feel so moved by going to iTunes and leaving me an honest thought and an honest comment, telling me what you think, and most importantly, tell me what you'd like to hear more of. It would really help me to bring more great, inspiring cycling stories to you. Until then, have an amazing day, make sure you ride your bike, and don't forget to visit my YouTube channel if you'd like to see the full version of this podcast live.